Flutter simplifies the process of building an efficient list a lot. If you're an Android developer, you know how much boilerplate it takes to do something as fundamental as a RecyclerView. And Flutter spares you from all of that. As simple as Flutter's ListView is, though, you still need to write some additional code to make it paginated. That is, not loading all the data at once, but saving some bandwidth and only loading what's necessary, say 20 results at a time, as you can see on the screen right now. In this tutorial, you are going to learn how to create a paginated ListView in Flutter. We're going to do this with the BLoC architecture pattern because even in an example app like this, we do not want our state floating all over the place. Hello, welcome to RecyclerView. First of all, let me tell you that you are going to get the most out of this tutorial if you understand the BLoC pattern and also if you know something about the built-value package. BLoC pattern stands for business logic component, and it's probably one of the best ways to manage your state in Flutter. Stages means your data, and you can check out the separate tutorial by clicking on the card in the corner. And then built-value can help you with building immutable data classes. Basically, it also offers serialization out of the box, and it's really cool. Again, you can check out its separate tutorial from the card in the corner. As a first thing, let's go over to pubspec.yaml and let's add our dependencies. Those dependencies will be as follows, and you can get the code from the link in the video description, which is gonna take you to recyclerview.com if you don't want to type everything out yourself. So we have built value and built collection. This is the aforementioned immutable data class library, which helps you with creating good data classes. Then we have Flutter BLoC, and then finally we have Kiwi, and Kiwi is a little dependency injection library for Flutter. We are going to use it even in this example app because I really want you to learn some real-world skills, and in a real-world application you would not be passing your dependencies, or actually you would not be creating your dependencies directly, but only passing them everywhere from a centralized place. We're going to get to all of this later. And then, because we are using built value and built value relies on code generation, we also need to add some dev dependencies, and those will be build runner and also built value generator. And also in the pubspec.yaml file, it's really important to notice the indentation. So make sure that you have the indentation the same as I do have it right now, because if we were to put, for example, this build runner under Flutter test, it would not work, so it needs to be right under dev dependencies. Now hit save, and it's going to, the Flutter will get all of the packages. Now let's start off with creating the structure of our app. You can see that we have a bunch of items displayed, and every single one of these items needs to have some underlying data. So the data is an color integer and also the title text. Then we are not using any kind of an API to get these items from, but we are only generating them locally. So we also need to have some kind of a data generation. Then we also need to build the UI. So we need to have the list block, list event, list page, and list state, which are all of the standard things that a BLoC patterns page needs. And then later on, we are going to get to the injection container for the Kiwi dependency injection little framework. All right, so right under the lib folder, we want to create a new folder, data. This will hold a generator and also the model folder. So new, 2 folders. And under data, another folder will be model. And this model folder will hold listitem.dart. The generator folder will hold listDataSource.dart. This tutorial is made in a way that even if you are using a real data source, so if you are communicating with a remote server and not just generating the data yourself, you are still going to be able to plug most of the things which you see in this tutorial into your real app. You would change only the implementation of the data source. Also, a real-world app with a real API is in the works, so if you don't want to miss those tutorials, definitely subscribe to this channel and also hit the bell button because it's going to be awesome. Alright, so we can close the pubspec.yaml and also the main.dart files, and we are first going to create the list item. If you have watched my tutorial on build value, you already probably have these snippets, so we are just going to write BLTH, which stands for the build value header, and its name will be list item. And then we want to have a BLT, which is a simple build value class. Its name will be list item. If you don't have these snippets, definitely check out the previous tutorial, and over there you can get these snippets from the link in the video description. Then our list item will have two fields, or actually properties: string get title and also int get color int. Alright, but now we have some problems here because we still need to generate the code for the list item. So let's open up our console and let's write Flutter packages run, or actually pub run build runner watch, because we don't want to build only once, but we want to rebuild every single time that there is a saving of some files. So let's run this command, and it has just generated the file listitem.g.dart. All we need to do to get rid of these errors is to delete some letter from a property and then add it back. This is just a Visual Studio Code bug, but now we are good to go. Also, I am hiding the .g.dart files, but I'm probably going to show them to you. So in the settings, just search for exclude, and here I'm excluding the file .g.dart. So if I delete it here, you'll be able to immediately see the list item.g.dart over here. This is the generated code. We should not modify it by hand. If you don't want to see these items, these generated items, just add the exclude over in your settings. Now it's probably not a bad idea to jump right into the list data source class, because we want to be able to generate the data first before doing anything else. It's gonna be just a simple class, and it's going to have one public async function, get next list page. So it needs to return future. This future will hold a build list, which is a special list from the build value, and then this build list will hold our list item. So get next list page. It will be async. Now let's import everything that we need to import. First thing here is that we need to simulate network. So we need to delay the execution of this function. So we want to await future.delayed, and we want to delay it by duration, and that duration will have milliseconds 750, so that is 3/4 of a second. Once we have that, we are going to generate our list. This list will contain all of the entries from one page. So we first need to somewhat define how many items there will be per page, and that is a perfect use for a constant. So static const int items per page, and those will be 20. Then we'll also have similar static const int, but it will be for page count, and we want to have 5 pages, so 20 items in 5 pages, that is 100 of total items. So now here we want to return build list of, and it will be of a list which will be generated. So list.generate, the length of the generated list will be items per page, and we also need to supply the generator function, and that we will create right now. Also, don't forget to put the semicolon after the return statement, and let's create the list item, which will be a function generate list item, and it will get an index, because as you can see right over here in the emulator, we want to include the index in the title, and the indices are like every single page has its own indices, so from 0 to 19, right? Here we have 19. Here starts the next page, so it again goes from 0 to 19 and so on. So what do we want to return from generate list item? Well, we want to return list item, and in this list item we want to instantiate it properly, and build values are instantiated like this. So we get a builder, and on this builder called B, we want to call, or actually set, the title to be a string containing interpolated index and also lorem ipsum, and then also a color int, which will be a random number. Now, random numbers need a random generator, and it's the best if the random generator is not newly instantiated, but if it's the same instance every single time. In order to have the same instance of random generator every single time, we need to create a property inside the list data source, and that will be static property final, because we don't want to change it once we have it, random generator, and it will be equal to random. So we also need to import the package .math, and now this color int will be equal to random generator dot next int, and that next int will be in the hexadecimal, so 0 then x. This marks hexadecimal number in Dart, and probably in also every single language that there is out there, and the value will be ff, so the maximum is full transparency and black. ff. So we have how many? 8 Fs here. This means that our random generator will generate colors all the way from white, from transparent white, to the non-transparent fully opaque black. Now let's hit save, and we are going to get the reformatted code. If the code doesn't reformat on save, you can always hit Shift-Alt-F and it will reformat that for you. At some point I am probably going to do a tutorial explaining how I set up Visual Studio Code to do all the things that it does for me. For example, when I save, it gets auto formatted. So definitely subscribe to this channel if you don't want to miss that tutorial. Alright, so that's cool. Now we only want to call, or actually pass, this generate list item function over to our list generator. Now we only need to make sure that we are really showing just 5 pages, and right now we are not ensuring that. So we need to add an if statement saying that if shown pages count is greater or equal than the page count, we somehow want to stop generating new pages. For that, we need to create an integer, shown pages count. It's going to be equal to 0 at first. And now if this shown pages count is greater or equal than page count, we want to stop the generation of new pages, and also let our UI layer know that, oh, we are not having any more pages. The best way to let some other classes know that we are not gonna have any more pages is to throw an exception and then catch that exception in the other classes. More precisely, we are gonna catch it in the BLoC class. So let's first create a new exception class under the list data source class. It will be just a simple class, no next page exception. It will implement exception, and that's all there is to it. Now we want to throw this exception from this if statement, so throw no next page exception, and also instantiate it. And finally, every single time that we generate a new page, we want to increment shown pages count. Cool, so we have the data layer done. Get next list page returns a future containing build list of list items. Now what we need to do is to create all of the folders and files for our UI layer. So under the lib folder directly, let's create a new folder, UI. This will hold another folder called list. And this list folder will hold many files: list block.dart, list event, list page, list state, and also list.dart. If you don't want to create all of these files yourself, you can get the code from the link in the video description. Now let's first sort out the list.dart file. This will be, I would call it a library holder because it will only export each and every of our other files which are under the list folder. So then in other classes, if we want to use both list event and also list state, for example, we don't need to import list event and list state separately. We can just import the list.dart file and that will import every single thing that is exported here. Now let's focus on the list state. List state will be also a built value class and it will hold the state of our whole app. So again, BLTH, it will be called list state. Then we want to have BLT for simple built value. Its name will be also list state. It will have two fields, built list containing list items. So yeah, it will be a getter only property, list items. And let's also import the class list item. These list items will be gotten from the list data source, which returns just the same build list containing list items. Then the next property here will be bool get has reached end of results. You can immediately see that the watch command that we have run in our console is still running and it automatically generated the liststate.g.dart file. Now you can see that the list state has one factory which gets the builder and it calls some generated list state. What we want to create now are another two factories, one for initial state and one for the so-called success state. In a real world app, you would also have some error state if the server just returns an error that what you're searching for is not present there, for example. And you can also have some other states which are specifically suited toward your app. But in this simple example, we are going to have only factory liststate.initial. This factory will return and it will call this default factory. So again, list state will pass in the builder, and on this builder we are going to set, so b.list items are going to be replaced with an empty build list of list items, because initially there are obviously no list items present because they are not loaded yet. And then also the has reached end of results, which is currently not present there. So we probably again need to delete something from here. Why is it not there? Well, let's look at the liststate.g.dart. It writes here that we are missing concrete implementation of getter. The list state has reached end of results. That's a bummer. Well, what we can do now is, I don't know, probably add another property, just name it something else, save it. Now delete that property which we added, and now we are good to go. Yeah. You always need to do something around just creating new properties or deleting one letter from the name of the property, and most of the errors are gonna be gone, and if not, you're going to get a really nice error message just like we have gotten it now. Anyway, we can now uncomment this return statement and set the has reached end of results to be false by default. Alright, so the code will be nicely formatted for us now, and we can now copy this factory and we are going to create another factory called success. This success factory will have one parameter of type build list item called items, and we are going to pass these items to our list items. And again, has reached end of results will be false even in this success factory. We're going to change the value of has reached end of results directly from the BLoC class. Once we have the state, we can move on to the list event. It's really simple. We just have one abstract class list event, and then we have another class fetch next page, which extends list event. And many of you have asked me in the previous tutorials that, hey, why are we creating a class? Isn't an enum just fine for this use case? The answer is yes, it is fine. However, you cannot even use enums with the BLoC library, which we are using now, although you could use enum in the tutorial about the vanilla BLoC where we build the BLoC ourselves, and definitely check it out if you haven't already. That tutorial explains the BLoC pattern really in depth. But even if we could use something like an enum here, what I wanna teach you is the real world usage of the BLoC pattern. And in a real world, you are probably not only going to have a fetch next page event, you are probably also going to have some, for example, I don't know, search event, and that would hold also some properties, right? So query and so on. As soon as you have something like this, you need to use a real class and not an enum. So that's why we are using classes over here. So we have the state, we have the event, now we can move on to the BLoC. But that is something we are going to leave for the next part, so definitely subscribe to this channel and also hit the bell button if you don't want to miss it. If this video helped you, give it a like and also share it with others. If you have anything to say, leave it in the comments. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, and see you in the next video.